My name is Mackenzie Reed. At Cassidy's 18th birthday party in the lakefront mansion, over 80 guests in designer gowns and tuxedos were laughing, waiting for the five-tier cake to be cut. The string quartet stopped the second my mother Valerie grabbed the microphone and stared straight at me across the marble floor. "I have two daughters," she announced, voice ice cold, "and Mackenzie is not one of them." Dead silence. Cassidy, standing right beside her in a custom silk dress, smirked and added loud enough for the whole room to hear, "Know your place already, it's embarrassing." Every single pair of eyes turned to me. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just reached into my clutch, pulled out a thick black envelope, and slid it across the white tablecloth until it stopped right in front of my mother. "Open it," I said, calm as ever. The seal cracked. The first paper slipped out. My mother's face went white. Cassidy's smirk vanished. Someone in the back actually gasped. That envelope changed everything in less than 10 seconds. If you've ever had a family member turn their back on you the second money or status showed up, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. Let's get into what really happened. Cassidy and I came into the world the same day at Toledo General Hospital, 11 minutes apart. I was first, she followed, screaming like she already knew life was a competition. Our dad worked the line at the big cereal plant on the edge of town. He wore steel-toed boots every morning and came home smelling like corn dust and machine oil. When we turned 5, a conveyor belt malfunction took him in less than 30 seconds. 1 minute he was waving at the security camera, the next, the plant manager was at our door holding his hard hat like it was all that was left of him. Mom, Valerie, picked up double shifts in quality control the same week. She'd leave before sunrise and drag in after 9, still wearing the white coat with the company logo on the chest. Our house sat in a row of identical brick boxes off Lagrange Street, the kind where every porch light flickers the same tired yellow. Dinner was usually boxed mac and cheese with government butter melted on top, but she made sure we ate at the table together, elbows off napkins in laps like manners could protect us from everything else falling apart. Every Friday night, she pulled both of us onto the couch under the same faded quilt and told stories about her parents in Pittsburgh. Robert and Eleanor Walsh lived in an old Victorian on the north side, the kind with stained glass and a porch swing that creaked no matter how much oil you gave it. They started driving over the first weekend after Dad's funeral. 4 hours each way just to take me for Saturday and Sunday. Only me. Mom explained it simple. My birth certificate still carried the Walsh name because Dad never got around to the paperwork before the accident. Grandma and Grandpa felt guilty about that, like they owed me extra time to make up for the family name I carried alone. Cassidy would stand at the screen door watching their Buick pull away, lower lip trembling, arms crossed so tight her knuckles went white. Mom always knelt down and promised next time, but next time never came for her. I loved those weekends. Grandpa taught me how to spot counterfeit baseball cards and let me sort the coins in his jar. Grandma baked lemon bars and let me lick the spoon while she told stories about growing up during the steel mill days. They had a spare room that smelled like cedar and old books, and every Sunday night they pressed a $20 bill into my hand for school clothes, even though Mom swore we were fine. Back home, Cassidy waited on the porch steps. Some weekends she ran to the car and hugged me like she missed me. Other weekends she stayed inside until Monday morning. Mom never forced it. She just kept working, kept cooking, kept tucking us both in with the same exhausted arms that smelled like factory soap and coffee. We shared everything back then. Clothes, toys, the top bunk on alternate months. We looked so alike, strangers stopped us in grocery aisles asking if we were twins, and we'd grin and say yes before Mom could correct them. At night, we whispered across the 3 feet of carpet between our beds about teachers' cartoons, what we wanted to be when we grew up. She wanted to be a singer. I wanted to own the cereal plant so nobody else ever got hurt on those machines. Those years felt safe even when money was tight and the heat clicked off at night. Mom was the center of gravity, and as long as her arms reached both of us, nothing could pull us apart. Everything cracked the year we turned 10 and Mom got moved to day shift supervisor. The new position came with a raise and a nameplate on her desk, but more importantly, it put her in the same meetings as Gregory Harrington, the owner of the entire plant. He showed up one afternoon in a navy suit that probably cost more than our yearly rent, shook hands with the management team, and somehow ended up standing next to Mom while she explained the new quality control logs. Cassidy and I were waiting in the lobby because Mom had promised us ice cream after work. Gregory bent down, asked our names, and told Cassidy she had the prettiest smile he'd ever seen on a little girl. He never even glanced at me. 2 months later, Mom brought him to our house for dinner. He filled the doorway, handed Cassidy a giant stuffed unicorn, and gave me a polite nod. That night, Mom wore lipstick for the first time in years. The real turning point came at the company Christmas party held at Gregory's lake house outside Cleveland. We drove 2 hours in his black Escalade. The place looked like something out of a magazine, marble floor chandeliers, waiters in white gloves, carrying silver trays of shrimp the size of my fist. Cassidy wore a red velvet dress Mom bought special. I had on my church dress from 2 Easters ago, already tight across the shoulders. Guests kept stopping Cassidy, telling her she belonged on television, asking if she took modeling classes. Gregory introduced her as Valerie's little princess. I stood by the dessert table eating miniature cheesecakes nobody else touched. One woman actually asked Mom if I was the babysitter. Mom laughed too loud and said, "No, that's my other daughter," like it was a punchline. Later in the car on the way home, Mom stared straight ahead and said, "If we're going to be part of Gregory's world, Mackenzie, you're going to have to try harder. Posture, conversation, everything." Her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Cassidy sat in the front passenger seat, humming, clutching the new bracelet Gregory had clasped around her wrist. 8 months after that party, they married in a courthouse on a Tuesday morning. Gregory paid for a reception at the country club that same weekend. Cassidy was the flower girl in a dress that cost more than Mom's first car. I wore navy blue and stood in the back row of photos. We moved to Cleveland the following week. The new house had 6 bedrooms, a 3-car garage, and a gate that closed with a remote. Cassidy got the corner room with the balcony. My room faced the side yard and smelled like fresh paint for a month. The first morning in the new kitchen, Mom poured orange juice into real glasses and told us to start thinking about private schools. Cassidy adapted overnight. She learned which fork to use first, how to say "please pass the rolls" instead of "gimme one," how to smile at Gregory's business partners without showing teeth. She started calling designer jeans denim trousers because that's what the girls at her new school said. A black Suburban picked her up every morning. I took the yellow bus to public school until Mom decided that looked bad and paid for a second car service just for me. Mom stopped hugging me somewhere between the wedding and the first parent-teacher night at Cassidy's academy. She still said goodnight, but it came out clipped formal like she was reading from a script. When she corrected me, she used my full name Mackenzie in the same tone teachers used right before detention. Gregory stayed polite. He paid the bills, signed the permission slips, told me to let the housekeeper know if I needed anything. But I could feel the temperature difference. Cassidy got invited to company picnics and charity galas. I got left home with frozen pizza and instructions to finish my homework before Mom got back. By the end of that first year in Cleveland, the house felt bigger than it was hallways echoing when I walked to the kitchen for water at night. Cassidy's laughter floated down from the third-floor game room while I sat in my bedroom doing algebra alone. Mom's hugs had disappeared completely, replaced by quick cheek kisses that never quite landed. I told myself it was temporary. Rich people were just different. They'd warm up eventually. They never did. By 14, I already understood I didn't belong in that house anymore. It started with the renovation. Gregory hired contractors to add an entire wing on the east side, walk-in closet the size of our old living room, private bathroom, with heated floors, a study nook with built into the window seat. All for Cassidy. My bedroom stayed exactly the same until the day the foreman knocked on my door holding a tape measure and said, "We're turning this into storage. You're moving downstairs." The basement had concrete walls, a single narrow window at ceiling height, and the faint smell of mildew smell that never quite went away, no matter how many dehumidifiers they ran. They put in carpet squares, and a twin bed from IKEA called it cozy. I called it exile. Mom handed me a debit card with a $200 monthly limit and told me I was old enough to budget. Tutoring stopped. Dance classes stopped. Even the allowance Gregory used to slip us both disappeared from my envelope. When I asked why, Mom looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're almost an adult, Mackenzie. Start acting like one." So I did. I took the Greyhound back to Toledo every Friday after school, 2 hours each way, and picked up weekend shifts at the same cereal plant where Dad had worked. The supervisor remembered me, let me log inventory in the air-conditioned office instead of the floor. $12 an hour under the table cash in a white envelope every Sunday night. Enough for groceries, phone bill, and the community college classes I planned to take senior year. Cassidy thought it was hilarious. She'd parade her friends from the academy through the kitchen in designer sneakers and crop tops, talking loud enough for me to hear from the basement stairs. "My sister still wears clothes from Target, can you believe it?" They'd giggle like it was the funniest thing in the world. One afternoon, I came up for water and found them filming a TikTok ranking poor people habits. Cassidy held the phone while her best friend read from a list that sounded suspiciously like my daily routine. Mom never told her to stop. Grandma and Grandpa still drove over once a month to take me to Pittsburgh. The visits felt different now. They asked careful questions about school, about money, about whether I was eating enough protein. One Sunday, I overheard Grandma on the porch phone, voice low and angry, saying something about that woman trying to change the trust. Grandpa shushed her the second he saw me in the doorway. On the ride home, they were quiet, just held my hand across the back seat like they were afraid I'd vanish. A few weeks later, Mom flew to Pittsburgh alone. She told Gregory it was for an old friend's funeral. She came back with tight lips and eyes that wouldn't meet mine. That night, she moved the last of my things out of the upstairs hallway closet without a word. I stopped asking for anything. Stopped saying good morning if no one said it first. Started keeping a duffel bag packed under the basement stairs just in case. The Harringtons ever decided the basement was too good for me too. Cassidy's Sweet 16 party took over the entire first floor DJ photo booth, custom cupcakes flown in from New York. I worked a double shift that Saturday and came home at 2 in the morning to find the cleaning crew throwing away leftover caviar like it was garbage. One of the caterers slipped me a plate of sliders before they tossed the rest. I ate them cold on the basement steps, listening to the house settle above me. Upstairs, life looked perfect. Instagram pictures of Cassidy in a crystal-beaded dress, Gregory's arm around Mom's waist, champagne flutes catching the light. Downstairs, I counted the cash in my envelope and added another 20 to the college fund hidden in an old shoebox. I was invisible, and for the first time, that felt like armor. The ultimatum came right after I turned 16 and a half. Mom called me into Gregory's study one Sunday evening. The leather chairs smelled like money and cigar smoke. She closed the heavy oak door, folded her arms, and didn't bother sitting down. "If you can't behave like a proper Harrington daughter, Mackenzie, then you don't get to live like one. Pack your things or start acting the part. You have 1 week." I stared at her for a long second. No yelling, no tears, just the quiet click of everything finally locking into place. I nodded once and walked out. 3 days later, I found a studio apartment above a laundromat on Monroe Street in Toledo. 400 square feet, peeling linoleum radiator that knocked like it was dying. First and last month's rent cleaned out my shoebox fund, but the lease was in my name only. I gave notice at the weekend job and asked for full-time quality control on the graveyard shift. The plant manager raised an eyebrow, checked my grades, then slid the paperwork across the desk. 40 hours a week, time and a half after midnight, full benefits after 90 days. I signed, without hesitation. Cassidy watched me load 2 duffels and a cardboard box into the back of a friend's pickup. She leaned against the garage door in yoga pants that cost more than my rent, arms crossed, smirking. "Don't let the gate hit you on the way out," she called loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I moved on a Thursday. Mom never came downstairs to say goodbye. Gregory handed me a $100 bill at the door for groceries and looked relieved. The first month was brutal. 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 4 nights on, 3 off. I learned to sleep with earplugs and a blackout curtain nailed over the single window. My fridge held yogurt, deli meat, and whatever leftovers the day shift guys left in the break room. I paid every bill the day it arrived, kept receipts in a folder labeled proof. They started building the paper trail almost immediately. Gregory's lawyer sent certified letters requesting copies of my pay stubs, my lease, my utility statements. Mom texted once asking for my new address for tax purposes. I sent everything. Every receipt, every time-stamped bus pass, every night I slept somewhere other than the mansion because the shift ran late and the last Greyhound had already left Cleveland. Cassidy played her part perfectly. She told the investigator Mom hired that I had been staying with friends for months, that I refused to follow house rules, that I once threatened to run away for good if they didn't let me keep working nights. All lies, but she delivered them with the same sweet smile she used for pageant interviews. 3 weeks after my 17th birthday, the petition landed. Emancipation of a minor. Lucas County Court. Valerie Harrington, petitioner. Grounds: the child has established independent residence, is financially self-sufficient, and has demonstrated mature decision-making. The hearing lasted 11 minutes. I stood in the hallway outside the courtroom in my work uniform because I'd come straight from the plant. Mom wore a navy suit and pearls. Gregory sat behind her. Cassidy sat next to him in her private school blazer, hair curled like she was going to prom. The judge asked if I opposed the petition. I said no. He asked if I understood that approval meant I would receive no further financial support from my parents, no medical insurance, no college fund, nothing. I said yes. He signed the order on the spot, effective immediately. Just like that, at 17, I became a legal adult. Mom didn't look at me when they left. Cassidy glanced back once, eyes shining with victory, then looped her arm through Gregory's like she'd won a trophy. I walked out into the cold Ohio morning with $43 in my checking account, a key to an apartment that smelled like dryer sheets and despair, and the first real freedom I'd ever known. The plant gave me benefits the next week. I enrolled in night classes at Owens Community College, paid per credit hour with my own paycheck. I bought a used futon, a hot plate, and a lockbox for the important papers I now carried everywhere. Some nights I sat on the fire escape eating ramen and staring at the Maumee River lights, wondering how the same woman who once measured medicine into 2 identical spoons when we had chicken pox could sign away her own kid without blinking. But mostly I just worked and slept and counted the days until I turned 18 and whatever came next. Because by then I already suspected something was waiting on the other side of that birthday, something big enough to make everything they'd done look small. 2 winters later, on an afternoon shift break, my phone rang with a 412 area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. Unknown Pittsburgh numbers usually meant bill collectors, but something made me swipe answer. "Is this Mackenzie Reed?" The voice was older, precise, the kind that belonged in mahogany-paneled offices. "Yes, my name is Theodore Langford. I'm the executor of the estate of Robert and Eleanor Walsh, your grandparents." The break room fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I gripped the edge of the metal table. "They passed 4 years ago," he continued. "Small private service. They had severed contact with certain family members and requested no notifications beyond immediate household. I knew who certain family members meant. The irrevocable trust they established becomes fully accessible on your 18th birthday. Due to privacy clauses and address changes, my office spent 14 months locating you through Owen's community college records. Congratulations are in order. He paused like people do when they're about to say a number that changes lives. The current value of the trust cash securities real estate and mineral rights stands at $32 million. Beneficiary Mackenzie Reed only. No co-trustees, no contingent heirs, no substitutions. My knees buckled. I sat hard on the plastic chair. There's an in terrorem clause, Langford added. Any challenge to the terms results in automatic forfeiture of any claim by the challenger. Your mother filed suit 18 months ago attempting to redirect funds. The court dismissed it within 48 hours. She is personally liable for $112,000 in opposing counsel fees. Those invoices remain unpaid. I closed my eyes. The pieces snapped together like puzzle boxes I didn't know existed. Grandpa's whispered phone calls, Grandma's sudden silence on the porch. Mom's solo trip to Pittsburgh that came back with fury in her eyes. They'd known. Langford faxed documents to the plant's ancient machine. I stood there watching page after page slide out trust declaration dated the month I turned 5, signed the week after Dad died. My name typed in bold. Cassidy's name nowhere. Mom's name crossed out in red pen with the words intentionally omitted stamped beside it. The mineral rights covered half of Washington County, Pennsylvania land Grandpa bought during the steel bust for pennies. Turned out to be sitting on the Marcellus Shale jackpot. I drove to Pittsburgh the next weekend. Langford's office occupied the entire 23rd floor of the Coppers building. He laid everything across a conference table the size of my apartment investment summaries property. Deeds, quarterly statements thicker than phone books. Your grandparents were very clear, he said, sliding a sealed envelope across the polished wood. This letter is to be opened only by you. I waited until I was back in the parking garage engine, running heat, blasting against February wind. The paper was heavy, Grandma's handwriting on the front. For our Mackenzie when she's ready. Inside 2 pages, they wrote about watching me grow up through the car window every pickup Sunday, about deciding the day Dad died that no child of mine would ever worry about factory accidents or double shifts again, about knowing Mom would remarry for security and wanting to protect me from anyone who might try to take what was mine. They apologized for the secrecy. Said some money makes people dangerous and they'd rather I learn to stand on my own first. Last line in Grandpa's shaky script. We never stop picking you, kiddo. Not for 1 second. I cried in that rental car until the windows fogged solid. Langford transferred controlling interests the following Monday. I opened accounts at 3 separate banks, hired my own counsel, set up automatic distributions to a scholarship fund for plant workers' kids. I kept working the line, same boots, same clipboard, because quitting felt like letting them win. Mom's unpaid legal bills started piling up. Collection agencies called the mansion. Gregory's business partners whispered. Cassidy's allowance got frozen when the trust department refused to release funds for her spring break trip to Cabo. I never answered their calls, never replied to the single text Mom sent 6 months later. We need to talk about Grandma's money. Some conversations aren't worth having. I signed the final acceptance papers on a Tuesday. Same day Langford wired the first discretionary distribution, enough to pay cash for a small house in Toledo if I wanted. I didn't. Not yet. The trust grew quietly in the background while I finished classes, earned promotions, built a life that belonged entirely to me, and I waited. Because some debts take years to come due. 7 years passed without a single word from the Harringtons. I finished the associate degree at Owens, transferred to Ohio State, and paid every dime with scholarships, night shift overtime, and federal grants. Supply chain management major, 3.9 GPA, graduated in 3 years instead of 4. The trust sat untouched except for the scholarship fund I created in Grandpa and Grandma's name. Every quarter it sent 30 kids of factory workers to whatever college they wanted. Their thank you letters lived in a folder on my desk. The plant promoted me twice, first to shift supervisor, then to quality assurance manager for the entire Toledo campus. I walked the same floors Dad once did, but now I wrote the safety protocols and shut lines down the second anything looked wrong. Nobody lost fingers on my watch. I bought a modest brick house on a quiet street near the river. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a porch big enough for a single rocking chair. I furnished it with pieces I actually liked instead of what looked expensive. Friends came over for game nights and barbecue. Real friends who asked how my day was instead of how much I made. I dated a little. Nothing serious. A mechanical engineer from Michigan, a nurse who laughed at my terrible cooking. They never met the family I didn't talk about. The past stayed locked in a box on the top shelf of the closet right next to the original trust documents. Every year on Dad's anniversary, I drove to the cemetery with a box of lemon bars I baked from Grandma's recipe. I left half on his stone and ate the other half while telling him about the new conveyor guards we installed, or the kid from the scholarship fund who just got into MIT. Mom's name showed up in the society pages sometimes. Charity galas, ribbon cuttings, Cassidy's debutante ball. Gregory's company expanded into logistics, bought billboards along I-75. They looked perfect from the outside. I never searched for them online. Never drove past the lake house. Never answered the one unknown Cleveland number that called every Christmas and hung up when I said hello. The trust grew on its own. Dividends, mineral royalties, quiet investments Langford managed like a silent partner. 42 million, 48, 55. I glanced at the statements once a year, signed where needed, and went back to work. I mentored new hires straight out of high school, the same scared look I once wore. Taught them how to read production reports, how to stand up to corporate when safety was on the line. Some of them called me boss. Some called me Mac. Nobody ever called me Harrington. I ran the Toledo Half Marathon every spring, planted tomatoes in the backyard every summer, shoveled my elderly neighbor's driveway every winter. Normal life. Hard-earned, carefully built mine. The past felt like another lifetime. Another girl wearing someone else's last name. I liked this version better. Then, the invitation arrived, heavy cream envelope with gold lettering delivered by courier to my house in Toledo. Cassidy's 18th birthday. Black tie, lakefront mansion, RSVP required. Inside was a handwritten note in Mom's perfect cursive. It's time the family was whole again. I was 25. I stared at the card for a long time, then booked a hotel room in Cleveland for the night, and chose the only black dress I owned that still fit. The mansion looked exactly the same, only older. Same marble floors, same chandeliers, same string quartet. 80 guests in diamonds and tuxedos milled around a 5-tier cake that probably cost more than my first car. I walked in alone. Heads turned. Whispers followed me across the foyer like wind through dry leaves. Mom spotted me first. She wore emerald silk, and the same expression she used in court 8 years earlier. She took the microphone from the bandleader, tapped it once, and the music died. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate my daughter Cassidy," she began, voice carrying through the sudden silence. "I've always said I have 2 daughters, and Mackenzie is not one of them." Cassidy, radiant in white beaded satin, laughed out loud. "Some people just never learn their place." The room froze. Cameras lifted. Someone gasped. I didn't flinch. I crossed the floor in measured steps, pulled a thick black envelope from my clutch, and placed it in the exact center of the head table, right in front of Mom's champagne flute. "Open it," I said, calm and clear. Mom's manicured fingers trembled as she broke the seal. The first page slid out. A certified copy of the irrevocable trust. Beneficiary Mackenzie Reed only. Value as of last quarter, $58 million. Second page, the in terrorem clause highlighted in yellow. Third page, the 2019 court order dismissing Valerie Harrington's challenge plus itemized legal fees totaling $987,000 still unpaid. Fourth page, Gregory's bankruptcy filing from 6 months ago. His logistics empire collapsed after a failed acquisition. Creditors circling. The lake house already in foreclosure. Mom's face drained of color. The papers shook in her hands. Cassidy lunged forward. This is fake. She's lying. I met her eyes for the first time in 8 years. Every document is certified. You can call Langford in the morning. He'll confirm. Gregory stood motionless, champagne forgotten, watching his entire world collapse in real time. Mom finally found her voice small and cracked. You could have helped us. After everything. After everything I cut in, you taught me exactly what family is worth. I turned and walked out the way I came. No one tried to stop me. The quartet never started playing again. Outside, the valet brought my modest sedan to the Circle Drive. I tipped him $20 and drove east toward the highway, windows down, cold lake air whipping through the car. In the rear-view mirror, the mansion lights flickered once, then kept shining bright, desperate and completely irrelevant. I never looked back.